Think about the next 10 years as a time of big changes in how we use money. Kevin O'Leary, who's really good with money stuff, says things are going to be way different. He thinks that new things like crypto, which is like money on computers, blockchain, a fancy way to keep track of money moves, and Bitcoin, a famous kind of digital money, will become really important for how we handle money. It's like he's saying that these new ideas will be a big part of how we take care of our money in the future. Picture yourself as a really rich person in the Middle East with a lot of money to invest, around $500 billion. Imagine that you used to invest in oil, but now you're looking for something new. You get an idea. Why not explore the stock market? So, you turn to Kevin O'Leary, who is an expert at creating investment plans, and ask him to help. You tell him to make a plan that doesn't include companies in the energy and airline industries. This is where modern finance gets really exciting. Listening to Kevin talk about his ideas, it's as if he's piecing together a giant puzzle that is the world of money. He breaks down the complexity, comparing it to a puzzle with countless moving pieces. He points out that there are billions of dollars just waiting to be directed to new opportunities. But what's holding them back are the missing pieces: clear rules. While there's a lot of buzz around things like crypto and blockchain, Kevin's perspective shines a light on what truly holds the key to success: the guidelines and policies that ensure everything functions harmoniously. It's like he's uncovering the invisible threads that tie together this intricate tapestry of finance, showing us that the right rules are the glue that holds it all together. Kevin's grand vision revolves around a bold prophecy. He envisions crypto, blockchain, and Bitcoin becoming incredibly significant in the world of finance. He goes even further, suggesting that they'll find their place as the 12th sector within an entity known as the S&P, a list that compiles major companies in the stock market. This might sound a bit unconventional, akin to envisioning technology and traditional financial concepts fusing into an unprecedented blend. Imagine it as a sort of innovative marriage between futuristic digital advancements and the established principles of financial systems. In this union, technology isn't just a bystander. It's an integral part of reshaping how we understand and manage money. Kevin is sure of his prediction because he sees a pattern. He explains that Bitcoin is more than just a digital coin. It's like software that can do special things. He mentions other cool tech stuff like Ethereum and Solana, and how smart people are using them to change how we handle money. It's like the tech experts are painting a new picture for finance on their computer screens. And the biggest part of the economy, finance, is becoming their canvas. But there's one important thing missing in this exciting story: rules. Kevin thinks that clear rules are like a guide that makes everything work better. He talks about going to Washington, where the government makes rules, and how different leaders are showing interest in crypto and blockchain. He tells us about a few important bills that could bring in new rules that make these new money things safe and helpful. And it's not just about rules, it's about teamwork. Kevin shows how everyone, from politicians to business leaders, needs to work together to make these changes happen. He talks about how stablecoins, a kind of digital money, can make finance more efficient and secure. He believes that by working together, we can make sure these new money technologies help everyone. Kevin's wisdom doesn't shy away from acknowledging the hurdles that lie ahead. He sheds light on a formidable player in the financial arena, the SEC, a watchful entity that ensures fairness and security in money matters. In a way, they are the vigilant sentinels of finance, but their interventions can sometimes pose challenges. Kevin takes us into his confidence. discussing how the SEC is scrutinizing Bitcoin's impact on the environment and recognizing the potential concern this raises. Yet, amidst the clouds of uncertainty, a ray of hope emerges from Kevin's insights. He delves into the intricate world of Bitcoin mining, the process through which new Bitcoins are brought into existence, revealing its unique potential. He envisions a future where Bitcoin mining, when powered by eco-friendly energy sources like solar and wind power, could contribute to environmental well-being. It's a remarkable twist in the narrative. The very technology that's scrutinized for its energy consumption could, under the right conditions, become a force for sustainability, embodying a harmonious coexistence between finance and the planet. As Kevin continues his journey into the world of Bitcoin's future, he brings to light something really exciting: the involvement of big institutions in the world of cryptocurrencies. It's like he's unraveling a mystery, showing us how these big players could pump trillions of dollars into Bitcoin. His excitement is contagious, as he imagines a future where Bitcoin becomes a major force, kind of like a powerful computer program that rivals the old ways of making money. Think of it as a grand adventure where Kevin is the guide, showing us amazing sights. He's like a conductor leading an orchestra, making all these different ideas and concepts come together in a beautiful way. His vision is not just a guess. It's like a treasure map that leads to a place where technology and money meet. It's a world where digital and real-life things work together, thanks to cool new ideas and rules. Imagine walking alongside Kevin on this exciting journey, where finance, which used to sound confusing, becomes a colorful and fun story. It's like being in a movie where everything is alive and interesting. Kevin's words work like magic paintbrushes, showing us a whole new world full of cool ideas. This adventure isn't only about guessing what will happen. It's about believing in new things, coming up with cool ideas, and being okay with things changing. Just like in a storybook, Kevin's words show us a world full of possibilities, and it's up to us to be brave explorers and try new things. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share this video. To be more knowledgeable about financial topics, make sure to subscribe to Financial Flipside and hit the notification bell to get alerted when new videos are posted